For this demonstration, we'll be creating a garage in a craftsman style or California bungalow style, which is fairly common in Southern California. And we're using two-point perspective. We're going to be using this grid. It's called a formal grid. And there's a few elements in this grid, or let's say the structured approach, that we're going to be using. First of all, the scale of these units is 3/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. And I actually, you can actually see it under here, but I will write it down on top. And there's a few elements of the structured approach or the grid that you can that I need to actually have on this sheet of tracing paper that I'm drawing on. Number one, I want to make sure I have my horizon line in. I want to make sure I have my vertical height line, which I will transfer the units on here. And I also want to have the ground line for the actual grid. Now, when we do the drawing, we will actually be creating this drawing 10 feet back into space, so 10 feet from either side of this grid, okay? So ultimately, it will look something like this along the way, so you can kind of see where we're going to go with it, okay? So to create this 10 feet back, we need to make some indications of where 10 feet is to the right and left. Remember, every one of these units represents 1 foot, or 1 foot square. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so here's 10, and I'm just going to make an indication there, and 10 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what I want to do is create the plan for this, the floor plan, or what I call a footprint for it. So I'm going to draw lines to the right and left. Now, based on this, you can actually count to make sure that you actually have enough room. So our plan is going to start here. So it will be appropriate to count how much room that you have. Now, one of the things that will be very, very important to note is where the corner of this plan is going to be. So this is really close to this line, that it can be challenging to draw when it's so close to this line. So it's perfectly fine if you move it past. If you move it past this line, which pushes it further into space, but more importantly, it will move this corner over so it's any verticals that are here are not going to be too confusing with this vertical measuring line. So let me count how much space I have, and I'll count over here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So here's 20. Okay, now the building that we're going to create has a plan of, or a floor plan of, or the base rather, is 16 by 24 or 22, depending on what you would like to use. So I need to add a little bit more space here. So what I would like to do is use my diagonal vanishing point, and I'm going to draw a line all the way to here and keep it really light, because I want to add a few more grid lines. Now, one of the things you can do is you can actually do this on the actual grid rather than doing it on your paper. So since we're just starting, we can actually do that now. There we go. And as this diagonal crosses these lines convergent to the right vanishing point, it creates more lines or more depth here that I can create lines over here and actually extend the grid, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to probably start up here and just work my way back down. So again, as this diagonal hits these lines converging to the right vanishing point, it allows me to extend the grid, because the diagonal vanishing point creates squares in perspective, in linear perspective, whether it's 1 point or 2 point or even 3 point. But creating squares in 1 point and 2 point are vastly different, but we still use a diagonal vanishing point that is that's at a 45-degree angle from the station point. Okay, so I've extended my grid. I guess I can make my make my notes here. Here's 20 right here. This is 21, 22, 23, 24. And let's see, and 10 is over here. This is 10. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I like to indicate these areas in tens because it makes it a little bit easier. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so it's healthy to do because you never know when you're going to be using it again. So, or when you're going to need to depend on these measurements. All right, so there we go. Now I'm going to create the actual base of this structure. And again, I'm going to count, but I'm going to use the ground, I'm going to use the grid at the ground line for this specifically. Now, while I have the opportunity, I think I am going to move this over. I'm going to move it over just a tad. I'm going to move it over here. So this is actually 12, and that's fine. That will work. So that means that this the vertical for this building will be here, and when you see it laid out, it'll make more sense. Okay, so let's count. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so here's 16 right there. So I'll take that, I'll draw a line converging to the right vanishing point. And now I have this that's going to be at 24. You do 22 or 24. Okay, I think that will work right there. So this is where my garage is going to be. And you can make decisions on which way it goes as well. It can, right now I have my garage going to the right. And I think that will work perfectly fine for this composition. So what would be appropriate is to create a height line over here that is obviously smaller, but it is aligned with this corner. So I'm going to create my vertical, and this is going to be a vertical measuring line similar to this one. You can see it aligned on the ground plane and on the grid. Typically we call this line here, the measuring line, the bottom of the picture plane. And let me make sure I get this right on. There we go. So now I need to transfer these units to this line. My long ruler for this. And the reason why we need to do this is because this is our measuring line, and we want to make sure that we have accurate units here. Now I'm not going to draw a line, I'm just going to line this up to the left vanishing point and transfer my units to this point. And quite honestly, you can make as many height lines as you need for your drawing. Now the reason why I'd like to use this one here, because it hits the corner, but it also allows me to draw anything that I need in that needs to be measured along this wall. I can actually do that in perspective and make sure that everything is in proper proportion. Now, my height line needs to be even taller. Because I would like to have, actually no, this is fine right here, but allow me to indicate where 10 is, 10 and 15. So here's 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here is 15. So 10 and 15. Now I know how tall to make my my foundation, or let's say the base of my garage. So what do I do with this, or how do I create the height of this? Because the base of this converges to the right vanishing point, so does the height of this line. So I go up to 10, because the base of this is going to be 10 feet. Line this up to the right vanishing point like this, and draw a line. Now I know how tall to make everything else. So I'm going to draw the back corner here. Okay, so this is the right rear corner, and the left rear corner, which is really the front of the garage. I can't actually use this line, but I have to use this corner and draw a line to the left vanishing point, because this is just a simple box. Like so. And now I can draw one on the left and on the right for this back corner. But I'm not going to draw it all the way through, I just want them to connect. And that way I can raise my rear vertical for this garage. Okay, so there's my base. So I'll make these lines a tad darker so it's easily seen. So red is still, it means it can be modified. Alright, so now I need to raise a roof for this. So let me zoom in a little bit. This is 16, and we want to find the middle. So we use 8. 8 is half of 16. Or we can make an X from corner to corner. They both work. 2, 4, 6, 8. And this is why we use the grid. Alright, so we're going to create a gable roof, or an A-frame for the front. that we will obviously project towards the back. And in order to do that, we could use this height line to do that. It does get a little bit tricky because we do have to zigzag it back and forth to make it work. One of the probably the easiest things to do is just create a simple height line specifically for this peak or for this A-frame. So we bring this line to here, as this is 8. This is 8 right here, which is half this width. Bring this up high, lines in the appropriate space, or on the appropriate measurement rather. There we go. So here's 18, 16, and 14. So I'll write those in. Because I already have these lines converging to the previous line, this will work. Now you'll notice that this is going to be it's going to be a tad taller because this line is 1 foot closer in space. There we go, just a tad taller. It doesn't seem like it's going to make it that much of a difference, but it's better to be right. It's better to be correct than anything else, because that can haunt an illustrator or an artist if they're depending on making these measurements correct. There we go. Now again, it doesn't look like it'll make that much of a difference, but at least I know that it is right. All right, so again, here's the midpoint. I'm going to draw a line to the right vanishing point, or just use the grid. I'm going to draw a line all the way to this line here. Where it crosses the back side, this back line, I will draw a vertical upward. And it's kind of arbitrary how long it is until I draw this line to the right vanishing point. Now I am keeping this a little bit longer because I'll end up using it to extend. I'll end up using this to actually extend my the roof line, which we'll do next. All right, so we have our basic A-frame for the house. We have the ridge of the roof. We can actually see the backside very, very easily. Now let's extend the front and create an overhang. And the reason why we create an overhang is to, well, it's realistic as far as a real structure, because the rain and water, you don't want it to invade into the house. You don't want it to come into the house or into the doorways. So you always want to have an extension. Now, what's proper is to create something that's at least 1 foot, possibly 2 feet. So we're going to actually use 2 feet. And in order to create a 2 foot overhang, we need to use the grid. Now this will serve dual purposes as well, because this will actually create a 2 foot wide sidewalk or walkway that we'll create around this building. So I'm going to go 2 feet away. Now I'm going to bring this all the way around. I already have this line here. And then 2 feet here. Now, because this grid is really tiny, I'm going to use my left vanishing point as a guide, because these lines are super, super small back here. Okay, so now I have this going all the way around. And now I can create my 2 foot overhang. 2 foot overhang is really simple. This is 2 feet away. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to look at it right here on the grid on the base, draw a vertical line upward, and and that's 2 feet out. If this is 2 feet here, it brings it all the way up, and there's 2 feet. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the back, where this midline crosses, that is 2 feet. And here's a 2 feet out. Now I need to draw 2 angles down here, or 2 lines down here, but I also need to make sure that this is also 2 feet away here, because it's in perspective, and because we have this incline plane here and it converges to a trace point, I need to make sure this converges accurately too. So I already have two feet out here and here, but I also need to extend it out here as well. So this is the original base, I'm sorry, the original foundation structure that we drew. So I'm going to extend these lines out. I'm going to draw 2 feet up here and here. And now I can connect these properly. And again, I am going to extend these lines out a little bit because we also have to have an overhang or create eaves for the side of this structure. So again, I'm keeping these lines a tad long. Okay, so I need to do this here in the back too. I already have this line extended out. So 2 feet away, and there it is. Now I just need to connect these right there. So again, keeping the lines a little bit longer. Okay. So to create the eaves, which means it's going to be 2 feet, it's going to have an overhang, I need to think about how tall this is going to be if this were an actual structure. Because I'm going to have a door here, and I want to make sure that the overhang isn't too long, that it's going to hit the top of the door if the door is open or somebody runs into it with their head. So what would be appropriate is to use this 2 foot mark here. This is 2 feet out from the side of the house, and actually see how tall this would be when I hit this line here, which is the eave. Okay, so this is 2 feet out here. Now, what I need to do is look at it in terms of height. So this is lined up here, and I'm just going to use my height line here as a guide to figure out how tall this is. So this is where it meets, and this is my projected height, or conceptualized height rather. So I'm just going to extend this out to here just to see how tall this is. Okay, so according to this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 feet. That's barely the top of the doorway, so that presents a problem. So instead of going 2 feet away, we're going to do 1 foot away from the actual structure. So this is 2 feet out. You can see 2 feet here, so we're going to do 1, which brings it up high enough above the doorways that we're going to draw. The reason why it's high enough above the doorways is because average doorway is 7 to 8 feet tall. We're using 8 foot tall doorways. And now I can draw the actual eave here, and I can transfer this information to this left side. And then draw a line to the left vanishing point here, and now I have the eaves. All right, so I'm going to, well, wherever you guys are at in your drawing, if you still need to catch up to this, go right ahead. I'm going to start to add some details on here, like I'm going to repeat the doorway and the main door here, and then the side doors. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw lightly the object lines. Okay, what was your question, Max?
With the windows, do you want very simplistic windows? Do you think that's a better idea?
Oh, well, you know what? That's actually a great question. Let's look at some reference for it. And now I'm going to use the same height for the door and windows on the side of this building. And this is 8 right here. So here's my height for it. So now you can see that if we had made this roof line, if we had made the eaves exactly 2 feet away from the side of the building, it would actually line up. You can actually see this line here. Here's 2 feet away. Bring this vertical up. You can see it actually hits that 8-foot line anyway. So it's going to look really hokey to have the doors and the windows the same height as the eaves. So as far as aesthetics are concerned with our drawing, which we are, we want to make it look pleasing to the eye. So we're going to bring it back a foot to make it look like a decent drawing. Okay, and it's just a garage, so we don't have to worry too much about it. Now, realistically, it probably would have been 2 feet away, but to the naked eye, no one's going to be able to see that. All right, so I'm going to start my door. I'm going to put a door here. I want my door about 2 feet away, even 3 feet away from, 2 feet away is fine, from the corner. And I'll see where 3 feet away is. Here's 3. Maybe I'll do it 3 feet away. And this is going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going to be 3 feet wide. Okay, so here's the opening for the door. This is also going to be the same, the walls are going to be the same thickness. And with this, I could run this thickness here for these walls along this edge, but it's such a small area, or such a small space, that I can just decide where half of that is for 6 inches. Okay, and here's the door. It does look thin because it is the side of the building. All right, so there's our doorway. And now let's look at the windows. So let me see. So let me count. I'm going to look at how much space I have from the corner. Oh, the corner of the building's here. I drew the wrong line. So I'm going to look at the corner of the building and see how much space I have. And I know I need to stay 2 feet away from the side of the building for the windows. I can't put it right on the edge or even within a foot because it's going to be structurally unsound and it's going to look like I don't know what I'm drawing. Okay, and I'm going to stay at least a foot away. Make my object lines a little bit darker, especially with the roof. And if you need to do that, go ahead and do that. And along the way, I will clean things up a little bit. So the key thing to remember when you guys are drawing is everything has a thickness. You don't want to have, for instance, like the roof, the roof should not be paper thin. Since we already have a line for 8 feet, this is literally going to be the bottom of this plank of wood. And that plank of wood even wraps around towards the garage. We see this a lot. We see this a lot. So I'm going to keep it like that. And this piece of wood that's up here, it's usually called a header. It's pretty thick. Right now we have this up here. We haven't determined how thick that is. We know that this is 1 foot. This is 1 foot. And you can make it at least 6 inches. I wouldn't keep it any smaller than 6 inches because it looks kind of silly. And I need to have a thickness for this too. So have the big doorway opening, the large garage door opening, the side door. I have 3 windows. You have to have at least how many? At least 2. Okay. And then I have all this chunky wood all the way around it, which is great. I love that. Love seeing that. But I still have this paper thin roof. And I also need to put fascia on the roof. So what is fascia? Fascia is that front piece of wood that we saw on the front of those houses. So I will approach this. I will approach this wood the same way that I approached doing this peak. So the fascia is anywhere between 6 to 8 inches thick. Okay, it's anywhere between 6 to 8 inches thick. So one of the things that usually when something is 6 to 8 inches thick, it's 6 to 8 inches thick this way, not this way. We've been doing everything vertically, but now we have to do it this way. So we're not actually going to be able to capture it like that. I mean, could we? Yes. Is it important to do it like that? No, it's not. You just want to make it look correct. So when you do this, you have to think, there's 2 things you have to think about. Number 1, you have to study what the roof does. All right. So when you look at this roof, we know this is what type of plane? Incline or decline? This is an incline, okay? What about this backside? Is this an incline or decline? It's a decline. Why do we know it's a decline? Down. Yeah, because it's going down. And you can actually see it like this. If we were to look at these 2 angles, you can see it actually declines, which means there's a trace point below the left vanishing point specifically for this. Okay. Now, Could I actually use a trace point for these? Yeah, if this was big enough. I mean, if my sheet of paper was big enough or my drawing table is big enough, I probably could do that. But this is such a small detail, but substantial detail, so you just want to do what you can to make it look correct. So we can already see right here what we can already see here what 1 foot looks like. I mean, it's pretty substantial. It looks pretty substantial. So what we can do is find a middle ground to see what we could actually get away with, what would actually look correct. And this is where it comes to where you need to ask yourself what is going to look right to your eye, and take some artistic license with it and use your best judgment with it. So what I'm going to do is I need to keep in mind that if I draw a plank of wood here, and it's climbing, it needs to be an inclined plane, just like this one. If I draw a plank of wood here, it's going to have to be a declined plane, which means it's going to converge down below as this one converges high. So with that, I'm usually going to start at the top, and I'm going to look at, actually, let's draw the incline first for this plank of wood. And I want it to resemble the inclines that we see here. And I also have to see how far down this would actually hang. I'm not going to draw one here. Actually, I will draw one here, but it's going to be smaller. So I'm going to take a look. Remember, it's 6 to 8 inches. So this width here looks like it is thinner than what we see here and what we see here. So that looks like this could be 8. 6 is probably about right there. All right, but I think I want it thicker. So I think that looks like that will work. And I also don't want a tangent. If I draw all the way to here, guess what? I have a tangent here at the bottom, so I just want to be kind of careful with that. So it's either I go beyond it, something like that could possibly work. If I do more of an incline, that might work even better. Now here's a corner of the roof. Yeah, there's not much I can do about the tangent. I wish there was, but there's not much I can do. Okay, so that looks like that will work. This height, I need to transfer over to the left vanishing point because this piece of fascia will also be at the same height. You know, you have the ability to fix tangents in your design when you can. So you do the best you can. All right, so I'm going to bring this down here like this, and now I can connect the two. So how do you figure it out? You just make it look right. Okay. And this also has a thickness to it. So with that, I'm going to make the thickness look right. It needs to converge, so I'm going to make sure it converges. Now, how thick should I make it? It's up to you. Usually this wood it's 2 by 8 or 2 by 6 inches, which is about the size of these planks of wood, so I wanted to make it look similar. All right, so you've noticed that I arbitrarily decided how thick this wood is here. All right, now, why does this, let me zoom in, why does the end of this piece of wood look thicker than this? So I'm going to ask you a dumb question. You guys can give me a dumb answer. Why does this look thicker than this one?
Closer to us.
It's closer to us. How much closer is it to us than this corner?
The size of the building.
16 feet. All right. I can't kid you and tell you that it's not a little tricky. It is a little tricky, and you will need to use your grid for it. Okay. So, and it is all about feel. You want to make sure that it has a believable. You want to make sure it has a believable look. What needs to happen is every row of your roof, what we call a course, every row going up needs to be foreshortened the higher it goes up. Meaning, the closer it is to the edge of the roof, it needs to be visibly larger because it's closer to the viewer. The higher it goes up, the further it is away from us, and so it needs to look like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're going to figure out the rows first. So one of the easiest ways to do this is make a line from corner to corner. I'm sorry, yes, from corner to corner. Doesn't matter if it's this from the top front to the rear, the bottom rear, or the top to the front. Okay, and with this, start off with something. Let me see. Well, okay, there's different ways to do this. You can eyeball it and just make it smaller and smaller as you go up. Or you could do something like this where you continue to divide things in half and half and half, so you have a guide for yourself. So let me show you. So I divided this in half. I kept it really, really light. I don't like eyeballing the whole thing because it's too much information. I would rather divide these in half and then do it sequentially. It just makes it a little bit easier to do. Okay, so what I like to do is, let me see. This is, I'm gonna count from the front of this. I'm gonna find out where the middle is. Oh wait, will I need to do that? No, I won't need to do that. Okay, so I made it X from corner to corner, and I figured out this midpoint. And I'm gonna do this quite a few more times, but I'm keeping my lines really, really light. So there's another midpoint. Now you guys know why we did this midpoint stuff at the beginning of the semester, dividing things in half. Okay, now you guys can see why we do this. We do a bunch of divisions by drawing a line from corner to corner. It just makes things a lot easier. So I have a row here, a row here, a row here. So I would probably need to do this at least 2 more times in each area. So now I have this divided up into quarters, and you can see this one is larger than this one, and then this one, and then this one is obviously the smallest. So again, I'm going to do this a few more times. Again, from corner to corner, from each area, from each horizontal. Draw a line converging to the right vanishing point. Now you could use your grid to do this, but you know what? Having it slightly off, having it look slightly off kilter, makes things look a little bit more realistic. Roofs aren't always going to be like perfect and straight. And I'm the son of a roofer, and I actually roofed when I was in college, a lot. So I understand if things dip. I understand if, there's, if the roof looks crooked, sometimes it's because of age. Or if a house sags because of age. Okay. So you saw me do a bunch of X's from corner to corner. Now what's important is this. Here, 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 and here. Those are all midpoints of each quadrant that I drew. So I'm just going to lightly add a blue line in here so you guys can see through all these guidelines. And now you can see the potential of actually making a pattern on a roof. Now, a roof pattern it needs to look staggered. It should not look like a bunch of rectangles stacked on top of each other. It will more or less have a brick-like pattern. But will it be a brick pattern? No. Okay. And I'm going to use my red pencil for now. So wood shingles, since we have these guidelines here, we can actually use those. These don't have to be perfect. What's going to have to happen is it's going to look smaller and smaller as the further back we go. But some can be thinner, some can be thicker, but you don't want to have something monstrous like this. It will never be like that. But they will vary in thickness, and I have these guidelines here that I can use. And I'm just trying to imply that it's at an angle. It has to be at an angle because it is an incline. And it's staggered, meaning you can't just put a line across and just be done with it, because it's not going to look right. It's going to look like you took a shortcut. So if they more or less look staggered, like you're going in between each one with each row, that's what matters. Now, do you have to do this all the way up? I mean, I have about 15 rows or 16 rows. No, you don't have to go all the way up. But you have to think about what you want the viewer to understand. You want the viewer to understand that this is like a old-fashioned wood roof, that it does have a pattern to it, and you are suggesting the pattern. You're suggesting the pattern, or also suggesting the texture. So let me lay this in a little bit more, and we'll bring it home. So some of most of these are staggered, meaning I'm going between each one, kind of like a brick pattern, or like the wood siding that we saw. This row's skinny, I'm not sure why. I think I screwed up on that one. No, not a big deal. Okay, so now, again, the roof itself does have a thickness, like the wood itself has a thickness to it, and it does vary a little bit. So I am not worried that it's not perfectly straight, because it's never going to look perfectly straight. And I'm not going to use a ruler for it, because I have these guidelines to help me. Okay. because it's wood, wood curls, so these aren't going to be perfectly straight. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit thicker in between. Now, I'm sure you guys drew rope in your beginning drawing class, drawing fundamentals. We have tons of rope here. The more you draw lines over a rope pattern, or let's say a candy cane pattern, the more lines you start to draw, the more it starts to look like rope, the rougher it begins to look. Same thing goes with drawing like a roof like this. The more you go over a specific area with a line, the more it starts to look like wood. I think you guys can all agree that it's starting to look like it's wood. And I'm just putting a slight curl to some of them. And I have to be aware of the guidelines that I drew too. Some of these are thin, some of them are thicker, but I'm trying to keep them staggered at least. And I'm not going to go too much higher with it because I just want to give it a good feel. So what would be really good for you is get some reference of pattern and texture of these things that you would see on a house and copy the pattern, use it as a guide or refer to it. When you're doing drawings like this, you're trying to visually suggest what the house is or what the concept is. So you can see I'm starting to stagger my line a little bit more. Oh, you guys can't see it. See up here, it's not terribly important. No one's going to pay attention to, like this shingle, no one's going to pay attention to that. So as a whole, you just want it to look like it's wood. And it's staggered. And the end has a thickness to it. Each row has a thickness to it.